I knew he'd be ready this time. we ripped him last time in Jack Day, ready when the music cuts this week on the State of Purple podcast. Welcome in to the State of Purple. As I mentioned, he's Jack Day. I'm AJ Mansour. This is the State of Purple, KFAN's Minnesota Vikings podcast. And the Minnesota Vikings are 5-1, a 24-16 victory over the Miami Dolphins on the road. They carry a bunch of momentum sort of into the bye week. Jack Day, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, and yeah, I feel like we're gonna really start sounding like a broken record on this show because it's I want to say the same thing over and over, week over week, but it hasn't necessarily been the same thing, but it hasn't felt great. But the Vikings are finding ways to win football games, and like we've said all along, it's the opposite of what was happening last year.
It's consistently inconsistent, I guess, is what we can say. But when the end outcome is a win, we feel good about it. The team feels good about it. There's room to grow, and you're still making progress in a division that seems like you're kind of taking the driver's seat in right now. So that's a good problem to have. Now, Jack, we have seen this team come out gangbusters on the offensive side of the football a couple times. We've seen this team win games defensively sometimes. We've seen this game win games with special teams. This game had a little bit of mix of everything, but every facet, I guess outside of our rookie punter was lapsing at times and had some inconsistencies. What was the number one good thing that you saw from this team, and maybe the number one concerning thing that stood out to you?
I think there's a couple really good things that can kind of go along with, I don't know. Last week I said I felt like this was going to be a get right game, which they were 4-1 going in this game, and I don't think that was the case necessarily because, like you said, there were some bad things that we can talk about, and I think maybe I start there. It felt like the offensive guru play calling that we're supposed to have, it was not there in Miami against a banged up secondary. I know Justin Jefferson got his way above 100 yards, but there were just some play calls that I think were questionable. But like I said, the Vikings found a way to win, and I think that comes down to the defensive side of the ball playing well. Zadarius Smith and Patrick Jones both having a field day against a very banged up and pretty bad offensive line. So, I think you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt because we haven't necessarily seen Zadarius Smith blow up yet this year. Danielle Hunter, I know he had a sack yesterday too. It was cool seeing Patrick Jones get a shot and make the most of it. But I think the biggest positive, and I hate saying this because the last time I said anything positive about special teams, the following week, it blew up in my face. But this week, we're going into a bye. So I feel a little bit more confident talking up the punter for the Minnesota Vikings. What a day for Ryan Wright. I don't think people don't regularly talk about punters winning football games, and I don't think that's necessarily the case here, but what a day for him, like flipping the script for this Vikings team, or flipping the field, 73-yard punt from your own end zone. That was amazing. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there were 7 pinned inside the 20 as well, which is a Vikings record. I don't know. It seemed like there were some situations where the Dolphins started with good field position, but the defense was able to contain them with their bend but don't break strategy where they're going to allow some yards. But again, something we talked about on the show last week, turnovers were key. They found ways to force turnovers and not necessarily make the most of winning the field position on the offensive side of the ball. But I certainly think that the punting battle that we saw yesterday helped.
Yeah, no doubt. Ryan Wright, the rookie punter, won the punt off that never was, because before the final preseason game, Jordan Berry was cut, and the job was I don't want to say handed, but earned and given to Ryan Wright. Yesterday, he had that 73-yard punt, like you mentioned. I think it was 75 net yards, 80 yards in the air, just ridiculous. The longest punt in the NFL this year. And I've seen differing numbers. I don't know. I haven't gone back and looked myself, but PA had 7 punts inside the 20, and the official scorebook though had 6. So
I saw that too.
I guess
I didn't know what to say.
The official scorebook is the official stat, I guess. I don't know where the differentiation is. Maybe there was one that was just outside the 20 that, I don't know, got jotted down but wasn't official. I'm not sure exactly. But you do have a situation where you have a rookie punter who is in there handling business. He leads the league with 15 punts inside the 20. I guess that'll happen when you get 6 or 7 in one game. But at the same time, he's pinning teams back. He's giving this team, like you said, flipping the field position and giving them the opportunity. He had the one shank last week, and I guess everybody makes mistakes. We'll give it to him. He also had the fake punt pass. It's a former quarterback, by the way, shifted over to punter so he could play in college. And you have his ability to throw the ball a little bit just to keep teams on edge. We saw that in not in New Orleans, I guess, against New Orleans in London. But when you don't have to worry about that side of it, and you have a rookie, a guy who's, the payroll isn't going to be a situation. We've seen that with special teamers before. Good position to be in, not having to worry about that. Now, Jack, you mentioned this game being a get-right game. Let me take a moment to let all of our listeners, our viewers on the stream right now, in on a little secret if they need to get right with a loved one in their life. Head over to SodaStick, sodastick.com, our sponsor for this podcast. You can get 15% off your order today with the promo code KFAN at sodastick.com. Jack and I are rocking the new Skull hats. You can get some T-shirts, any Minnesota sports inspired goods. Sodastick.com, promo code KFAN will give you 15%, and you'll get right. You'll get right. Christmas around the corner. Maybe you're in the doghouse and your loved one needs a special something. Go to sodastick.com, and it's a get out of the doghouse free ticket right there. Jack, so we want to talk about the game a little bit. We're going to recap some things. A lot has been said about this game already, but we're going to share our opinions. The offense stumbling out of the gates. Was it 4 straight 3-and-outs before there was even a first down? Really struggled to get things going. Finally got some points on the board. We're opportunistic down the stretch, and we're able to get it. But when you talk about scripted plays and things you're going to get, this seems like this might have just been a poor game plan, and the Dolphins threw something at them in those first 4 series that they didn't expect and didn't plan for.
Yeah, I think there was something along the lines. It was weird, and I know everyone saw the graphic as well during the game where it was 120 degrees or 110 degrees, whatever it was, on the Vikings sideline compared to the Dolphins sideline, and you can't really make excuses. It's the same temperature on the field for both teams, but it looked like the offense and the play calling, everyone involved in the offensive game planning, it was groggy, and it wasn't what we're used to seeing. I say used to seeing, what we're expecting to see, I think, is a better way to put it about this offense, because you and I both had really high hopes about this offense. I still think that's the case. And again, starting to sound like a broken track record, like I was just talking about at the beginning of the show, this offense hasn't reached its full potential yet. And I think that's a great thing. But at the end of the day, the Vikings, if they're going to have the offensive issues like they had to start the game against Miami, there isn't going to be a world where we're going to be having conversations about the Vikings beating, and I don't want to start talking about Super Bowl aspirations. I think it's a little bit early for that, but even if you want to say the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs, say you play them, I don't think an offense can fall flat on its face like we've seen a couple times now, again, inconsistently throughout the course of this season, but that just can't happen. Those things are going to have to get cleaned up. And to take that to the next level, this offense, it's not going to compete if it does ever find its way to a Super Bowl. Watching the Chiefs and Bills play, it just seems like those two teams are on a complete different level. And again, there's 6 games. I think the Vikings are in a good spot, obviously 5-1 going into the bye. I think they're going to try to clean some of these things up, but it's still a little bit frustrating that we haven't been able to see that true dominance from the offensive side of the ball with all the playmakers that we have on that side of the ball yet. And I think it's going to come eventually. I don't know when that time is going to be, but I think the Vikings are in a great place with where they sit, but you want to see more from the offense. You want to see more from the first-year head coach. But again, it's difficult to complain too much about that when the team sits at 5-1.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook was my bold prediction for the week. I think I had him at 150 yards, 77 yards, didn't quite get there, one of them being 53. So, I mean, it was kind of a slow game for him. He did have the big run. It was impactful and came at the right time. But Dalvin Cook's role on this team might just permanently be different. I mean, this is no longer, I don't think, an injury situation. I think it might be a schematic thing, a dink and dunk. Maybe it's blocking scenarios. I'm not entirely sure, but it appears as if the days of Dalvin Cook going, buck wild and scoring, multiple touchdowns, multiple big runs, really cracking this thing open may have gone by the wayside. Now, I say that, right after you said that we haven't figured this offense out yet. We don't know what we're doing. And I agree with that. And so I'm going to give it a couple more weeks coming out of the bye. You have 2 weeks here to self-scout. Kirk mentioned he wants to sit down with KOC and figure some things out, figure this offense out and get on the same page because they're definitely not there right now. A couple more weeks, though, of this Dalvin Cook situation, not going crazy. Again, 77 yards and a touchdown is not bad, but when you think of one of them being late in the game, being 53 yards, you do have a scenario where he was, 20-some yards and not really having much impact on the game up until that point. So I'm going to wait and see approach with Dalvin Cook. Are you worried at all with what this ground game has kind of done or maybe not done?
I wouldn't say I'm worried about Dalvin Cook, but I think I'm worried slightly about some of the play calling styles that we've seen for Dalvin Cook. He's always been a guy that's he's at his best when he's outside the tackles. I think that's pretty clear. He's a shiftier type back. He's not a bruiser, if you will. I know sometimes he does like finishing his runs frequently, but it just seems like they're trying to run him up the middle more than we've seen him do in the past. I don't know if you feel the same way about that when we're watching these games, but one of the things that I was so excited for after that Packers game was just finding your best playmakers and getting the ball to them in space. We saw it with Justin Jefferson in week 1. We're continuing to see it with Justin Jefferson. I still think it's pretty fair to say Dalvin Cook is a top 2, top 3 playmaker on the offensive side of the ball. And it just seems like with what we were expecting, with all the motions that we saw early on, it just has kind of felt like some of that stuff has gone away. And I think screen game is another huge asset to Dalvin Cook's game. We've seen him slice defenses in the screen game in years past, and we haven't seen a ton of that. And that's what kind of makes me feel optimistic about this offense, because we haven't necessarily seen some of the strong suits in what was years past. And maybe we're not going to, because it is a different offense. It's more of a pass heavy offense that Vikings fans aren't used to seeing. But I do want to touch on one thing quickly about that game as well. And just flipping back to what we've talked about in years past with this team, it felt like last year, the Vikings obviously were in a lot of 1-score games that gets played on every single game now, but it wasn't just 1-score games. They were frequently playing sloppy games and making just dumb mistakes. And we saw that yesterday, but it was the Miami Dolphins making those mistakes. I think you heard some of the fans booing in the stadium, but they were pretty blatant calls that were going on. And it felt like a year ago, the Vikings were in that situation and getting to this 5-1 record. I think we have to touch a little bit on this. They have cleaned up a lot from what they were a year ago. It always felt like there were timely penalties or timely turnovers that really affected this team last year. And those haven't happened, knock on wood, in 2022 yet. And I think that's a huge reason why this team sits where they are heading into the bye.
Just like clockwork, I'm glad that I was going to bring this up, but I'm glad that Todd in the chat has brought it up as well. We talk about Dalvin Cook. Heading into this season, the preseason conversation was more about trading Alexander Mattison coming into the last year of his contract and trying to figure out what his value might be. This comment says we can always trade Dalvin Cook in the offseason. I think that this might be the play going forward here. If you look at the way that Sean McVay and the LA Rams use running backs, Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, you have running backs, split backfields. They're not fully utilized. They're not the focal points of the offense. It's clearly a passing aerial attack. They're used in the passing game, but not really. That's kind of what it feels like we're seeing right now with Alexander Mattison and Dalvin Cook. And what that might tell us is that the focal point for this offense might not have the same value as the monetary value that Dalvin Cook presently has on this team and against the salary cap. The opportunity then to trade a player like Dalvin Cook to a team that may fit elsewhere, to get some assets, to get some draft picks, whatever that might be, becomes more and more of a reality. We won't dive it deep into that right now, Jack, because it's very speculative and there's a long time between now and then. But when you have Todd's chiming in again. Young talent coming into the league. You see the Brees Halls, the Kenneth Walkers. These guys they're top level running backs. I'm not going to overlook that. But at the same time, when you have guys, athletes that come into the league and they do have an impact, whether they're first round, second round, third round, fourth round running backs, you can kind of schematically use them in a way to fit this offense, and that just might be the way for the future here. Jack, let's quick flip to the defensive side of the ball, because we're going to do a little shorter episode here as well. And we'll talk again, Dalvin Cook trading. We'll do a bye week assessment later this week where we can really dive into some of these things. But right now, we're going to just kind of go back over this game right now. Your prediction for bold prediction heading into this game, I think, surrounded Eric Kendricks getting an interception. Now, technically, the Harrison Smith interception bounced off Eric Kendricks' helmet, so he at least got an assist on that one. And then there's Will Raggets, who had to show us all up and say Zadarius Smith was going to get 2 sacks, and he goes out and gets 2 sacks. I mean, the defense played well when they needed to. Again, you said bend, don't break. And then in the fourth quarter, they locked it down. They got the fumble recovery by Cam Bynum. They got the interception by Patrick Peterson. They did what they had to, and they stepped up when it mattered most.
Yeah, and I think this is, I don't want to offend anyone by using these words like I have many times in the past on this show, but it was the showing of the old guys on Sunday. I mean, it was the biggest named veterans on this team, Harrison Smith, Patrick Peterson, and Zadarius Smith. Those were the guys that really took this game and controlled the outcome of this game. I thought that was funny. I was laughing with my dad about the Eric Kendricks thing. It actually looked like he almost got the ball out of Harrison Smith's hands instead too when he redove for it. But it's fun seeing the guys that have been in the league for so long and been so good for so long making plays against a backup and third string quarterback. I think most of those came from when Teddy Bridgewater was on the field, which is fun seeing an old friend out there playing after obviously what he went through in 2016. But I want to talk
a reminder that it's the same old Teddy.
Yeah, that was a great reminder of that as well. But one of the most exciting things for me was the emergence of Patrick Jones II, because we didn't see a lot of him last year. I actually didn't really realize. I think I looked at Twitter around 11:30 or 11:45, and I was like, oh, DJ Wanham's out. I didn't even realize that. And I was like, who's going to step up? It was cool seeing Luigi Villain get a shot to be on the field a little bit more. But Patrick Jones made the most of his opportunity. And I think we're going to start to see, I mean, we've seen him on the field in that pass rush rotation frequently throughout the season, but I think he's earned more of a spot, not necessarily in the regular defense, but on pass rushing downs where they might bump Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter down to the inside. I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more of Patrick Jones, and I think he earned that in Miami.
Jack, as we head to the bye week, we're going to maybe just off the cuff little tease for our in-depth assessment later this week. We keep mentioning the Vikings have not fully put it together yet. They are 5-1, good spot to be in, but they haven't figured it out. They haven't clicked on all cylinders. What do you think is the most important cylinder to click on if they are going to figure it out prior to the tough stretch of their schedule in Buffalo? You get the games coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks now.
I think they're going to have to kind of pull back on the bend but don't break defense. I think they're going to have to start playing a little bit more aggressive on defense, and especially when they get to a stretch in their schedule. I believe there's a back-to-back week, and don't get me wrong, this schedule is starting to shape up. There were some games that we would have talked about 4 or 5 weeks ago and probably circled them as clear-cut W's on the schedule, and we're starting to see some new teams kind of emerge, and I think there's one specifically that Vikings fans are quite thankful for that emerged over the weekend in the New York Jets, but it's both of the New York teams, the Jets and the Giants are both on the schedule, and they're playing some really good football. Right. But I think the defense, you're going to start seeing some better offenses that are going to know how to find the end zone rather than commit 3, 4, 5 penalties and get sacked when they're down in the red zone. They're not going to be playing backup quarterbacks forever, and they're going to start playing the Josh Allens, Dak Prescotts of the world, and the defense is going to have to step up. And I think, again, we talk about this regularly, but they're going to have to start playing more complementary football. They're going to have performances where the offense, defense, and special teams, that can happen. They can all play good in one game, believe it or not.
I don't think it can. Not in this state, not for this team. I don't think it can.
We're gonna need more of those games, and I think Vikings fans have a right to kind of feel good enjoy the stress-free watching football this weekend, where they're not going to tug on your heartstrings at all. They're 5-1. And again, I think that's a huge positive that we keep saying that they haven't reached their full potential.
Absolutely. Special teams, specifically, Jack, the kickers. We still need to figure this thing out. Like, they got the 2-point conversion, so it ended up not really factoring in. But that missed extra point is going to come back and bite us in the butt. It just is what it is. As Minnesotans, that's like our state motto. The new Soda Stick shirts that I had on last week, I know you have one too. The land of 10,000 missed kicks. I mean, come on. It just you guys, the MVP in London. Was it last week or London where he had 5 for 5? That was 5. That was last week. 5 for 5 field goals with Greg Joseph.
I can't remember. I'm spacing out.
One of those last two games. I know they all blend together. He was 5 for 5. Special teams player of the week. I think it was the London game. He ended up winning the game for them. But at the same time, you miss one extra point and it could end up losing a game for you. But they're figuring out ways to win, so let's do it. Last thing, Jack, and then we'll get out of here for the day. Nick chimes in, wants to know why we can't just trade Dalvin right now. Why can't we just do it in the middle of the season? The backup seems sufficient. I don't hate the idea. Generally speaking, though, the big trades that benefit teams that are trading away the stars happen in the offseason in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think even if Dalvin Cook is a decoy in the backfield, he's a better decoy than Alexander Madison or Ty Chandler or Wang Wu. I think we heard it from the Chicago Bears defensive coordinator a week or two ago when he was saying, we can game plan for Justin Jefferson or Dalvin Cook, but it's so hard to game plan for Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook when they're on the field together. And I want to go back to special teams really quick because I think he deserves a shout out. Josh Metellus stopping that fake punt. That was another huge point in that game yesterday where it might go a little bit unnoticed on the box score. I think that's pretty obvious because it's a tackle. But if they get that first down, that's a huge momentum shifter that teams usually try to take advantage of. Vikings, hint, hint, you should try to do that when you successfully convert on fake punts as well. But I think he deserved a shout out just because he played well when he needed to come in for Harrison Smith this year, and he's playing well on special teams as well.
If ever there was a fake punt that you could just see coming from a mile away, it felt like that was the one. Wasn't that the play where right before it there was a penalty that they declined to kind of take the down instead of pushing them back further? So it ended up being 4th and rather short. I forget exactly what it was, but the whole time I'm like, what? I guess I understand taking the down, but you're given this team that at the time had shown that they had weapons, had shown that they could get some things. All they had to do was get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands. That's what it felt like. And then they do the fake punt. But Metellus knocked the runner out of the bounds and knocked the football loose, and it was a good situation. So let's say what up to Dave P. Skull from Pennsylvania, diehard Viking fan from 1969. You guys are awesome. 5-1 is awesome. Well, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. You got to rep the purple out in Pennsylvania. And the best way to do it is to go to SodaStick and sodastick.com. Thank you to our sponsor, SodaStick. 15% off with the promo code KFAN. We'll see you later this week for a bye-week breakdown. Don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but we're obviously going to assess the season to date, the schedule going forward, some of the good, some of the bad, what the team needs to do. Might have a guest join us as well. We'll do that later this week, kind of celebrating the bye week and a week to rest from the hardcore analysis. We're going to dive even deeper and go even harder and corer with the analysis. I don't know if that's how you say that, but we're gonna go with it. But anyways, we'll wrap it up today, Jack. Thank you very much. I know you are rocking and rolling behind the scenes at the radio station. But if you want to follow Jack on Twitter, it's at Jack_H_day for some big Minnesota Vikings opinions and information there as well. So you can follow the State of Purple podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and join us each week, multiple times a week, as we do these live streams. You can be part of the conversation just by jumping in the chat. Thanks to everyone who does that as well. So, Jack, I will see you later this week, and we'll be in touch, my man.
Perfect.